Well, good evening, everyone who's dialing in from the UK, that is. My name's Pete. I write as PM Freestone, and I'm the author of the Shadow Scent Duology, beginning with The Darkest Bloom and concluding with Crown of Smoke. So YA fantasy duology. And tonight I am here, though, to be in conversation with two authors that I admire greatly about the conclusion to the Aurora cycle, Aurora's End. So this is what Samantha Shannon described as, to sci-fi, what Stranger Things is to the cinema of the 80s. A fusion of everything you love about the genre that adds up to something completely fresh. I couldn't agree more, and I'm delighted to welcome Amie Kaufman and Jay Kristoff to introduce themselves and chat about the book.
Hi, Pete.
Hello.
Hey, mate. How you doing?
Hey. You have a few words you'd like to say first before we get started.
Yes, so usually this wouldn't happen at a UK event because we'd be in the UK and, you know, we dream of one day soon. But for now, because we're in Australia doing this event, in Australia, whenever we do anything like this, we do what's called an acknowledgement of country first, which goes like this. I acknowledge that I am coming to you from the lands of the Boonwurrung people, and Jay's on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, who are both part of the Kulin Nation. So we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And that's how acknowledgement of country goes.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to being on that same land in, what, I don't know, under 70 days for the first time in 2 years.
Not that we're counting.
No, I'm not counting at all. But we're here in the meantime to talk about far off lands, far off planets. Trilogy achievement unlocked again. How are you feeling?
You know, it crept up on me. I don't know about you, Jay. I sort of forgot that it was like, oh, we're done.
The end of the trilogy. It's in the title.
I mean, sure, but you know.
I mean, it was a weird book to write because it was written during the pandemic. I'm sure everybody out there who was creating any kind of art during the pandemic had the same kind of feels. But yeah, it was strange in the sense that we didn't get to write it together for the most part. Usually we will touch base, you know, at least 4 or 5 times, you know, get together in the reel and kick around plot ideas and whatnot while we're writing a book. But this time we only really got to meet the once, which was at a writing retreat right before the pandemic kicked off, where we started tossing around ideas and plotting the first of the 3 arcs in the book. So it's not spoilery to say that at the end of book 2, the squad is kind of scattered. They're in 3 different parts and there's 3 different plot lines as a result in book 3. And we really only got to plot the first one in real life, and everything else was done over Zoom. So
just like this.
Yeah. So that was kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, it's sad to say goodbye to any series. Like these characters a lot, but we're really proud of the ending that we gave them. It feels like a good send-off, and it feels like a send-off that's in keeping with the things that we were trying to say in the series. So yeah. It should be pointed out that it's 6:30 in the morning for us over here. So if I'm rambly or if I actually fall asleep during this, I have my phone beside me. Amie can call me and wake me up again. But yeah, 6:30 is not my natural habitat.
And it was my birthday yesterday, so.
And it was my birthday yesterday, yeah. So
a little tired today.
I'll do my best.
I've got my hybrid home advantage being at the 7:30 time here, so I'll try to be nice to you. But you guys aren't that nice to your readers sometimes, right? Is there anything you want to warn them about without spoiling in this 3rd book?
I mean,
if you got to book 2,
I don't think
you're
we're
okay.
sorry. I don't think we're sorry for it. But I mean, I do find it interesting that I get asked a lot, like because I try and do, like, on Instagram, I try and do a Q&A about once a month. And I have been bombarded for the last few months with people who are genuinely anxious, who are genuinely like, will I be okay when I read this book? And I'm scared you're going to hurt me. And, you know, to which I'm sort of like, well, some of y'all didn't finish Obsidio and it shows. Like, we take care of you at the end of a trilogy. But, you know, I mean, it's, you know, one of the reviewers I spoke to out here said she did sob for the last 100 pages, but a lot of them were tears of joy. And, you know, I think it's going to fill people's hearts up. I don't think it's going to leave them heartbroken.
Okay.
Yeah, there are certainly sad moments in the book. I mean, it's an ending, so endings are kind of sad in and of themselves. But yeah, nothing happens in there without purpose or reason. And yeah, like, we like these characters as much as you guys. So even when we hurt them, we're doing it to make the story more compelling. Like, people say they don't like to see bad things happen, but if bad things don't happen in stories, then the stories are really boring. Like, conflict kind of drives all narrative. Bad things have to happen in order for a story to be engaging. So, you know, bad things happen, but for the best of reasons, we hope anyway.
Yeah.
So you're not gratuitously cruel to us.
No, hopefully not.
So you mentioned there loving the characters. I'm presuming if I asked you who your favorite was, tell me to get on the first shuttle out of here. Or would you?
No, we got asked that the other day.
Yeah. Did you answer?
I think I did. I don't know if Ames did.
My answer changes day by day, which is funny.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Jay's favorite character tells us a lot about how his brain works.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite character was probably Kat. And I mean, we won't get too spoilery just in case people haven't read the first book of the series. I don't know why you'd be here if you haven't, but you know, a thing happens to Kat and it's quite sad. Yeah. But I mean, we wrote Kat as an Aussie, so I think I had a soft spot for her just because she was an Australian. But she was also, she's kind of the common sense character of the group. She was the one person that pushed back when everyone else kind of got swept up in this thing. She kind of kept her feet on the ground, which is ironic given that she was the pilot. And she was the person that kind of pushed back against Tyler when he was kind of getting swept away and all this. So yeah, I liked her as a kind of voice of reason, but also she was Australian and didn't take a lot of grief from anybody. So yeah, she was a fave. She was punchy. I liked her.
I did enjoy, because you don't often see it, like hey, what if we don't go on a quest? What if we take this to the authorities? Have we considered
what if we actually call the police? It just like stops every 80s movie in its tracks. It's like, we'll call it. That's the right thing to do. And then the credits roll.
Yeah, you're right. We should get people who are qualified on this. Yeah.
So I forgot to say at the start, I'm so sorry to everyone who's listening at home or wherever you've got your screen, but we will have time for questions at the end, so do think of them, your own questions, and you can drop them into the chat at any point too, but we'll save them at till the end. I was going to frame that differently if you wouldn't answer me about the favorites, because I know a lot of authors don't like to play favorites. I was going to say, who would you want to be stuck with if you're inside a desert island simulation on the wreck of a space station marooned in the fold?
I mean, those are very different answers.
I mean, be Zilla, right?
Well, how much do we have to fend for ourselves? Because if you want to have a good time, it's going to be Scarlet. But if you want to, survive the experience, then yeah, probably Zilla. I don't know, Zilla and Finn tie. I can do consonants. Zilla and Finn probably tie for me for my faves for very different reasons. I think, Finn, because he's the heart of, he's so family oriented. He's so, like, it's literally built into his DNA that he's aware of the bonds around him at all times. And Zilla, I think, because, we spent so much time preparing to share who she was and to allow her to grow over the 3 books. And I have a very soft spot for her.
I thought you were kind of cheating there when you said Tin, because I thought you were going to do a Tyler Finn hybrid. I was like, no,
I just can't say. Look, many of the fans are into Tin, but no, I just can't say Finn ties with getting the consonants the right way around.
It's 6:30 in the morning, so.
Yeah. Well, let me stretch your brains a bit. The 6:30
Yeah.
brains, post-birthday brains. You know that I'm a teensy weensy little bit of a nerd. So I'm always interested in terms of the writing process on what research folks do. And yeah, this is set centuries in the future on planets and places and craft we've possibly never even heard of. But I'm really interested in any cool research stories you have from the trilogy.
Ooh.
Or even any cool research that you wanted to squeeze in and couldn't, and you want to tell folks about.
This one was,
I mean,
yeah, go on, Jay.
There you go, Ames. There you go.
Well, I mean, I feel like in Illuminae, we had very specific situations that we had to really get the science down for, whereas this is a much more of a kind of an adventure epic. So there is a lot of stuff that, you know, you make up, you know, like quite clearly a lot of the things that happen in it, we don't know how to make happen yet, but there's always piles of research. I think probably, and I'm going to be very non-spoilery here, don't worry, but you know, in book 2 they're given gifts from a vault and they don't know what the use of all of the gifts are going to be. Probably my favorite research moment, quite shallowly, was the way the pen gets used in book 3, because I had to text a professional to ask them about how about the use we had in mind for the pen. And this will all make sense to all of you when you get to that bit. But I had to text and ask about, you know, we're proposing to do this with the pen, would that work? And what I forgot was that this professional is a fairly new acquaintance and isn't used to me asking weird author questions. And I did not specify it was for a book. And so said acquaintance thought I had a life-threatening emergency on my hands and panicked. So once I walked that back and explained it was very fictional, that was definitely my favorite research moment.
We had,
but you know, we got it right.
Yeah. I mean, there was the research into the world's greatest party scene. I think Amie had to do research into that party in like the 1800s or whatever. Where that guy had like
Admiral Russell,
a wagon full of bourbon or something, and the booze that they had cooking was so intense that the people working the booze had to work in shifts because the fumes was overpowering them and stuff like that.
Oh, the cocktail that was
actually
so
happened in real life.
They were in canoes on top of this cocktail, the barman, and they could only work in 15-minute shifts. But when you all reach the Magellan entry about the greatest parties in history, the one about Admiral Russell here on Earth is a true story.
That's actually true.
Yeah, really happened. And I mean, there was also research, like for instance, you know, Zila goes on a real journey in this series, and in book 1 she's just giving you kind of one-line chapters, obviously, but by the end of book 3, you know, she's talking as much as anyone, probably as much of a surprise to her as anyone else. But you know, she does give us her backstory and it is pretty traumatic, and so I wouldn't say it was research that I, you know, enjoyed doing, but it was important research, I think, at the very beginning of the series, to speak to psychologists, psychiatrists, and therapists who have experience working in that kind of trauma, both to make sure that it was portrayed, you know, sensitively and thoughtfully, and I was going to say accurately, but obviously no one actually has a traumatic experience on a space station, but you know what I mean, with verisimilitude, but also to make sure that as the series goes on and she starts to form bonds and she starts to sort of, you know, change a bit in the way that she's sort of interacting with the squad, we wanted to make sure that we weren't just kind of magically healing the trauma that she'd experienced. We wanted to make sure that that kind of healing was something that could genuinely be on the cards for someone who had been through what she did. So that research was around kind of making sure that we had Zila set up at the very beginning, even though it wouldn't come to fruition until books 2 and 3.
Anything to add there, Jay?
I mean, there's the start of the series as well, I guess. Like, the original name of the series was the Andromeda Cycle because we were originally planning on set it in the Andromeda Galaxy, which is the galaxy that's most proximal to the Milky Way. But Amie and I went to a lecture by Brian Cox, who I'm sure most British people know. Americans don't know who he is. And he, he basically just a big talk about space, and we're nerds, so we get into that stuff. But one of the things that he tried to articulate to the audience was just how big an actual galaxy is. Like your brain is not quite built to understand the scope of the size of space. Like it just bends your mind. But there's between 200 and 400 billion with a B stars in the Milky Way galaxy alone. So once we kind of had a grasp on how vast the space we were talking about was, we decided to bring the story back to the Milky Way, because there's no need to set it in another galaxy. Our galaxy is huge enough for all the strangeness that we had planned. But that meant we had to change the name of the series, because it wasn't going to be set in the Andromeda galaxy anymore. And that meant they had to change the name of the main character as well. Her original name was Andy. I think when we started writing the book, maybe it was Andy for a little while as well. Her name was Andromeda. And yeah, we had to change it to Aurora. Weirdly enough, we didn't even get the Sleeping Beauty correlation as well. We had no idea. We just thought it was a cool name. And then yeah, and then someone pointed out, it's like, is this a Sleeping Beauty riff? And we pretended that we were clever.
Yes.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Genius.
Yeah. Planned it all along.
Look at my intertextuality. Aren't I cool?
Yeah. Aren't we clever? It's like, no, we just thought it was a cool name.
Nice. I was actually going to ask about this in terms of, the writing process. You mentioned before it changed dramatically in terms of, where you wrote and how you, collaborated because of what you've set the world. But I was interested, is there anything else that changed over the course of, 3 books and a world that was changing quite a bit? There was so many real life plot twists going on. Anything else that surprised you along the way as you developed the series, or was everything fairly locked down at the start apart from, Andromeda, Ori?
I mean, we had some things that were left, with a question mark on them. Like for example, we didn't know how the pen was going to get used until we wrote book 3. Like we knew that we were writing a Mr. X. Like it gets used for a purpose, and it seems like a pretty shabby purpose, and it's a lot of trouble to get Finn a pen just to write a note that Cal ends up ignoring, immediately after he gets it in book 1. But we knew that there was going to be another use for it further down the line, but we had no idea what it was actually going to be. So we had kind of planted seeds, I guess, but we didn't know what they were going to grow into. So we didn't quite know how a few of the gifts in that gift-giving scene were going to be used. So hopefully it looks like we planned it all along, but we made up some of that stuff.
There's a Douglas Adams quote about that. He talks about when he was writing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think it goes something like, and when some twist or turn seemed to throw light upon something which had gone before, no one was as pleasantly surprised as I. Which I think a lot of writers have that experience, like where you write something and you're like, this looks like it was, but I mean, that said, a lot of it was like one of the most enjoyable scenes to write in book 3 was there's a scene where a character kind of rolls their metaphorical sleeves up and says, let me explain to you the plans that have been in train since the beginning of book 1, which is, a fun moment for the authors to get to be like, oh yes, we planted all this in book 1, the stuff we really did plant in book 1.
We did actually plant some stuff, yeah. We did have a vague plan, but it was vague.
Yeah.
I think you're adrenaline junkies to me. Like, let's try and catch up.
Yeah, bungee jump and braiding a rope all the way down.
I mean, do you plan everything, Pete? Like, do you know everything that's going to happen before you start writing? Are you a like hyper plotter?
No, I am a reformed pantser, so I am. If we called it architects and gardeners instead, I'm like a landscape architect now. I think, I don't completely plan everything. I used to be like, oh, this is so funny. Tells you a lot about me. I used to be like, but if I plan, is it really art?
And then remember like giving Darkest Bloom to me, like the very first draft, of me being like, so cool. When's the 3rd act coming? And being like, oh, that's not the end. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I've done way worse myself, but yeah.
We haven't had the, you know, the sexy male character chained to a wall yet. It's not the end. And that was the darkest thing. So. But yeah, no,
yeah.
I kind of like that headlights metaphor, you know, like you make an overall structure, you make that, you know, that there's a highway there, but you can't see every detail until your headlights kind of shine on it.
Yeah, sure. Yep. So yeah,
I mean,
we're kind of the same.
Yeah, and I think the one big change that happened with this series was that we thought we knew the town that we were navigating for at the end, and then the closer we got, the more we were like, but do we want to visit there? Is that a good idea? And
yeah,
that's a big thought to have, obviously, at the end of a trilogy.
Yeah, we thought we were headed towards a big kind of Star Wars-y finale, like a big attack the Death Star, pew pew type space battle, I guess. But yeah, the closer we got to it, the more that started to feel like it was wrong for a couple of reasons. Like it was wrong probably because of the kind of story that we were trying to tell. You know, it is about coming together rather than blowing things apart, and having a conclusion that was solved by just blowing something up didn't really feel right for the story that we had built. But also, you know, it's probably a little bit cliche to write a epic space battle to conclude the end of an epic space trilogy. So yeah, the closer we got to writing that scene, we were both thinking the same thing simultaneously, but neither one of us kind of brought it up. And then yeah, I think I called Amie on the phone.
Yeah,
and
Jay called me one day. We got to talk about this.
How did it
go? I was like, oh my god,
I'm not sure this works. And yeah, Amie was kind of thinking the exact same thing. So that was cool that we had both arrived at the same revelation independently of each other, because it showed that we were probably on the wrong track, and just blowing something up at the end would have felt a little bit lamer than when we actually ended.
Without spoilers, can you give us any insight into how you stuck the landing then?
We talked about it on the phone for about 10 minutes. And about 5 minutes into that, it was one of those conversations where the person has already said yes, but the other person just keeps talking. Like that was me and Amie. She's like, yeah, you're right. And I just kept talking and talking, and eventually she told me that I needed to shut up, and she would go away and write it. Just leave her alone. And I said, yeah, I've got it. And kind of click and hung up, and came back 2 weeks later with the ending. And weirdly enough, it was like a lot of the chapters are quite collaborative. Like we would kick them back and forth with each other, and because we're writing characters that the other is the steward of, like there's 6 main characters and we are in charge of 3 of them. So we kind of kick chapters back and forth.
Which ones?
Sorry, say again.
You're never going to admit which one's a which, though, right?
No, we don't tell people which is which. No. But yeah, weirdly enough, when Ames wrote that chapter and sent it back, it was perfect. I don't think we changed a single thing, like aside from grammar or whatever, but it was just perfect. And when I read it, it's like it's the coolest thing that Ames has written, at least in our books. I think it was amazing, and it like gave me all the feels, and it felt totally perfect, and we didn't change a word of it. So that was a really good sign that we'd made the right decision in the end, rather than just blowing something up. So yeah.
I think before that, it was like, okay, thanks. That's lovely to say. But
you're welcome.
It was like genuinely though. But no, I mean the thing is though, it is collaborative though, right? Because like I had been sitting there being like, something's not right and I don't know what. And I think anyone who makes any kind of art will tell you that like the worst possible feeling is knowing it's not right, but not knowing why, which means that you don't know what to do about it. And you have a horrible feeling you're about to have to try and fail a whole lot of options to figure it out. And then Jay rings up and goes, it's not right, and starts talking. And yeah, like you said, about 5 minutes in, it was like just enough for me to be like, oh, that's just collided with what I'm thinking and I see it now. And yeah, for the very first time since our friendship began in 2012, I did actually literally tell him to shut up. Pete has known me for a long time, and like that's like a lot from me.
This is like take yes for an answer, dude.
But also it's like, you know, there's you know, I'm quoting Philip Pullman now, but you know, like the soap bubble stage of an idea we talk about, where something's very beautiful but very delicate, and if you touch it, it will go. And I was like, no, I've seen it based on what you're saying, and now if we talk too long, it will go. I have to go start scribbling notes real quick. But also the type of thing that happens in the ending, she said, being deliberately obscure, is the sort of thing I like writing most. And it's the sort of thing Jay loves reading. And so it's very helpful to be writing something for a specific audience. And in this case, I was just writing it for one person.
Yeah.
So, you know, in all writing, the more specific you are, the more general it is in reality.
Yeah, it just felt like a really sweet and perfect culmination of everything that we'd been doing. But it wasn't until we saw it that we realized how right it was. So yeah, hopefully people like it.
Yeah. If not, I guess blame me.
We've just talked up this ending for the last 5 minutes. So.
Don't you dare! Don't you dare!
No, we stuck it.
No. I will come for you.
No, we stuck it. I'm confident.
Yeah. I've just started actually working on something very early days with a co-author, and I do appreciate that feeling where you're just like, if I can make them laugh, or you know, like
sure,
something, then I'm doing my job, you know. So
yeah. And that's one of the cool things about collaboration. You do get that kind of immediate feedback, and if you know you made your co-author like that, you probably wrote something funny. But yeah,
I reckon half a dozen times since 2012, I have gotten a comment from Jay in the margins that says, "Oh, missed it up here," and I'm always just like doing laps of the study, being like, "Yes, I have won."
Doesn't happen very often.
No, he's a tough crowd, so you know you've done a good job.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite feedback from Amie then, Jay? You missed it
up.
What do you dig when you get it?
I think. Amy's really good. Like Amie used to do that kind of. Amie was a people person for a living for a very long time, so she's very good at managing people, particularly the people that she works with. So I am not lacking for praise, but I am not a people person. So at least the good thing there is when I do give praise, you know that it must have been absolutely amazing, because if it's just good, I say nothing, because it's good. What do I say?
Yeah, you did.
So if I do say something, then it's great.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, thinking about the things that I had down here to talk about. I'm aware we have a few questions, but we've got a little while longer, and I do want to end up on my, around the galaxy in a hot minute. Let's get ready for that kind of quick fire. I always love doing with you guys because you give me good answers. Anyway, there are some questions already appearing about what next. I'm going to come at this from two different angles, so this is not the end of my questions. But given that you are both powerhouses at this stage, I'm going to say my definition. We're finishing up this trilogy. There's lots of other things going on. Jay, you're off slaying vampires and taking names in adult land. That looks like it's been a wild ride, yeah?
Yeah, it's been great so far. People are really loving the book. It was a weird one to write because I was writing it in lockdown, and I was writing it alone. So the world was pretty dark, and the world that I was writing in was pretty dark. So I think some of what was happening in the real world kind of bled into that story. But yeah, people are really loving it, which is great to see. So I'm kind of in the trenches on book 2 at the moment. I worked on it yesterday. I even worked on my birthday. So just because these things take a little bit longer to write because they're bigger books, the Empire is probably
enough. But yeah, I didn't bring.
I don't know what
my copy of Empire is over in the other house. So.
Yeah, right. I don't know what the final word count of Aurora's End was.
Empire is comfortably twice as long, and I think twice
probably
a bit.
Yeah, probably twice as long.
The acknowledgements of Aurora burning that you only had 1 page left because it was so big.
We actually
comedy acknowledgements because we think it's fun, but yeah, Aurora burning and Aurora's End. Our editor was like, "You do not have the room for this.
You can't have any more pages." So we had to write the short version of the acknowledgements. Yeah. I think that was a process of deadlines as well. Like everything kind of got crunched towards the end. So yeah, we turned those deadlines around in a day. But the Empire books are longer, so they just take longer to write. So I'm kind of in the trenches on that.
it's two of Aurora's End and 3 of most YA books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Which is fun because you know, things can be a bit bigger in terms of world building, a bit more complicated in terms of story, but as a result, it takes longer to write. Not to say that this book wasn't complicated. I think Aurora's End was probably the most complicated book of maybe the end of Obsidio was pretty hard as well. Like I remember when we were on tour for Gemina, we were driving around the States because we actually prefer to drive rather than fly if we can, because you actually get to see some of the country that you're traveling in rather than just seeing airports and hotel rooms. And so we were driving around.
To take a 6'7" guy on a flight.
Your height, Jay. Nothing.
No,
and nothing to do with the fact that he gets randomly searched at every single airport we go to the point that I insist on going through security before him, so that while he's getting randomly searched, I can go and get the coffees, because otherwise you got to stand behind him and wait. So, which
is ridiculous when you think about it. Like, if you were hiring a drug mule, you would hire Amie. You wouldn't hire me. Like, you wouldn't hire the 6'7" lunatic covered in tattoos. Like, you'd hire someone who looked regular.
Yeah, I always get searched. What's that about?
It's the tie.
I used to a lot, and eventually I asked a guy why I was getting searched so much, and he said, "You just look like you're not going to give me a hard time." And I was like, oh, so now I scowl when I go through and don't make eye contact. And I know
so you look furious.
I mean, I just look a little bit annoyed, because furious could be a tip off as well. But like, I mean, the thing is, me trying to look a bit annoyed is not usually that successful, to be honest. Like, you know, I'm friendly, people can tell. But yeah, we were driving.
So we were driving, and plotting the end of Obsidio, and I was driving. And Amie had a notebook on all that, and we were just planning out every step because there was multiple plot lines kind of interweaving in that one as well. People in different places having to do things in a certain order, so the people in the other places could do the things that they need to do.
I still think the story's worse.
Yeah, I think it was too. Like that one meeting that we had when we actually got together and plot in the reel, that was when we were plotting the Finn, Scar, Zila part. So we'll call that part A. So when we were plotting part A is probably the most complicated out of all 3. And we started with that one. So we had this feeling that the book was going to be super, super hard to write. But, you know, we just started at the hard part, so it got easier as it went along. But making all those pieces fit together and figuring out what was happening and why and how it was going to culminate, it was really hard. Like, writing time travel is no joke. So yeah, that was probably the most intensely we had plotted anything. And it,
like, we submitted that for edits and copy edits with a big spreadsheet that was like, here is every possible timestamp you could need in the entire thing. Because anyone who wants to move anything in an edit or has a question in the copy edits, we want you to know what the ripple effect is going to be. So so, you know, so that you can help us work it out. It was brutal.
And in there, we had to get a bunch of character beats in it as well. So not only was it complex in terms of, you know, just the physicality of it, the science of it, it was also complicated in terms we got 3 different characters in the scene. They've all got to have emotional beats. Zilla's got to reach a certain point, no spoilers. We had to do the whole Magellan scene that Amie was talking about, the kind of revelation of why all this is happening and what is actually happening. Like, so yeah, there was a lot of moving parts in that A plot. And then, I think it was the most complicated thing that we have ever done. So even though adult epic fantasy is complicated to write, it doesn't mean YA is easy.
Yay YA.
Things we'll learn.
Amie, can you tell us any secrets?
Oh yeah, I'm like a nightclub right now. Like, you know, like when you're queuing outside a nightclub and one person leaves, so you get to go inside. Like, Aurora's End is on the way out, and the same day it released, I handed in my new draft to our editor and was like, there you go, one's off the dance floor, have the new one. Which was sweet. She was like, oh, I was just sitting here having bittersweet feelings about the end of the trilogy, and I guess we're doing the new one now.
Get back to work.
Can you tell us about the new one? What can you tell us? Tell us secrets.
The new one is called The Isles of the Gods. It's a YA fantasy. It's got magic and gangsters and lots of cool sailing stuff, and it's got a sailor girl who did not ask to be stuck with a jerk of a prince, and it's got a spoiled prince who did not take this seriously enough until he was in it, and it's got a scholar who did not volunteer for a quest and will be complaining as soon as he can work out who to write to about this situation. And I love them all very much. It's, yeah, so I mean, it's not coming till 2023. But yeah, it's, I've been working on it since 2013. I started trying to write that book in 2013 and I had to keep leaving it because I wasn't good enough yet and I couldn't make it work. And finally,
you're a sailor, like when you were,
I took my first steps. I literally took my first steps on a boat, and that was when it clicked. Like in the very early drafts, I think they got off the boat in like chapter 2, and then one day at 3 a.m. I literally woke up and sat up and went, why did they get off the boat? The boat's where I live. The boat's like, you know, we always say when we're talking to writers who are coming up, you know, there are stories only you can tell, and they think that we're being cheesy about it, and you know, we're not. We deeply mean it. Like, you should be telling the story that has you in it. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute. There's a story I can tell here that not everyone can tell. There should. So yes, then it's finally, thank you, started to flow and is now a book.
Amazing.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Get it on Goodreads, everyone.
Well, yeah, you know what I should actually say is I'm we always get so many questions at events like this and other places about how books get made. Like, why is it that I'm standing here saying to you, you know, oh, I've handed my book into my editor, but then it won't come out for another 18 months. Like, what's that about? And so I'm actually going to be doing a podcast about that called Pub Dates that I'm doing with my friend Kate Armstrong. We've both got books coming in 2023 with our friend Kate Armstrong, all of our friends, and because Isles will be my 19th book and Nightbirds will be her first. So we're going to do the countdown to publication. We're going to talk about, you know, our edits and our copy edits and seeing our covers and getting ready for launch, and talk about, you know, our characters, and talk about my scholar who's very annoyed to be on a quest and that sort of thing, so that, you know, there won't be any spoilers, but by the time we get to release, people will be ready to jump in knowing how it got made. So I think that's going to be really fun. That's starting in January.
And there are some writing questions here already about writing advice. Amy's actually got a podcast, if you weren't already aware, on writing.
Yeah, Amie Kaufman on writing. And my most recent guest episode is actually Jay. And I gave him the question to answer that I did because I like he's always, I think, have had the best advice about it of anyone I know. But yeah, if you have writing questions, I mean, you can submit them and I might answer them in season 3, which we're doing right now. But it's 10-minute episodes that answer questions about craft.
And we're good enough friends that this is not going to be weird. You have a really good podcast voice. So
you know what? I would say like 50% of the feedback I get, it's like 50%, wow, it's really improved my writing, incredible. And 50% like, I find your voice very calming.
It is, it's super calming.
I'm a bit stressed. Quick, put on Amy's podcast.
Yeah, it is. It's quite strange because it's your voice, but it's not your voice.
Yeah,
it's like your podcast voice. So it's like, I know it's you, but at the same time, it is super calming. It's like the ASMR videos of someone just whispering so you go to sleep. It's like, it's sleepy time, but
yeah, no, I get that a lot. I've just embraced it at this point.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. But yes, Amie Kaufman on writing it is, isn't it? The podcast. I think I was talking over you before, so just saying that again for those who want to look it up. There are questions here about what next, and I know a lot of people will be feeling that there's a loss. You talked about a loss, or the end is a bit sad when you finish a trilogy. And I was thinking about this because I was thinking about how Illuminae felt when it ended. And I went back even in time to when Illuminae first came out, the Illuminae files. If you haven't read the Illuminae files, get on it, stat. Was Victoria Aveyard described Illuminae as filling the Battlestar Galactica hole in her heart at the time. And For me, the Aurora cycle filled the Mass Effect hole in my heart. And I was thinking about, well, what's going to fill the Aurora cycle hole in our hearts? And then I was like, oh, but wait, it's been optioned for TV. Can you tell us anything about that?
Oh, not much.
Not really, no. Well,
Well,
Hollywood's
isn't
one of
it
those
like-
weird places where,
Yeah.
stuff is in motion, but you can't actually talk about it. So
then, even though I know it's completely kind of like a only happens in crazy dream worlds, if you could dreamcast it, even though you have no real say over that as the authors generally.
no, you don't.
Can you tell us about who you would have as any of the squad?
See, I think we're too old to do that. Like because it would be actors who are just, just coming into their teens now, and everyone who we like our headcanon for this.
Gibbon's hair blonde for Tyler or anything here, like.
But I mean, like our headcanon for the squad are actually people who were teens when we were teens.
Yeah.
They're actors actors and actresses that we had crushes on when we were, 15 and 16, who now, would be playing the squad's parents. So
or you could just say they're a young someone.
I mean, it would also be cool just to have, have new people discovered as well.
Yeah.
Like, one of the cool thing is when you're writing YA, you're dealing with young characters, and hopefully you would get actors kind of at the start of their career who hadn't done anything, in terms of the mainstream that people had learned about yet. And this would be a vehicle that young actors could kind of showcase their talents and go on to cooler things. So that would be one of the cool things about casting it. Jennifer Lawrence kind of got her huge break through Hunger Games, that kind of stuff. So that's one of the cool things about writing for young audiences with young characters.
I would not envy the person who had to play Finn, though. My goodness, that makeup chair every single day.
And the contact.
Yeah.
And the contacts.
Yeah. I hate wearing contacts half the time, so yeah.
Cal's got it easy. Just get some fake ears stuck on around.
Yeah. So 1 minute you can lie to me with my Around the Galaxy in a hot minute. You can lie to me or you can tell the truth. We're just going to do it fast either way. Okay. So are you ready?
Probably not, but go.
Actually, how many boyfriends has Scarlett had?
I don't know. It's up around the 80 mark, I think. 80.
Okay. 80. Which of Zela's earrings are her favorite?
Pizza,
yeah.
Does Cal braid his own hair?
Yeah, probably. It braids itself. Itself. It's just that magical.
Sentient. He wakes up and like, or like, maybe like Snow White in the woods, like little birds come in and
birds come in and put on his dressing gown and braid his hair for him.
This is benignly. Which plants remind Finn of home?
Which what? Sorry.
Plants remind Finn of home. They're not all evil.
They're not. Flick vines. Named after my sister, Flick, who was a gardener.
Does Tyler ever use curse words on the inside?
Yes. That's good. Yes.
Okay.
I think everybody does, right?
I don't know. Holy cake. What's Ori's favorite baked good?
Oh man, that just went deep inside. Like trying to choose a favorite baked good. Very difficult. I am gonna go for probably like one of the high tea, with the multiple platters of like scones and little petit fours and little friands. That's
like saying choosing tin as a hybrid character.
Yes, all the desserts. Right.
Final one from me for both of you. You're both invited to the coolest party in the galaxy. But there's just one catch. You must cosplay one of the Aurora Cycle characters. Who do you go as?
I probably go Cal because he's the tallest. He's the tallest.
Yep, Scarlett.
And he would be easy.
But
Yeah, you could do that as well. Yeah, actually, she's got black hair. I'd have to shave off my beard though, and I don't do that for anybody. The last time I shaved off my beard, it was like 20 years ago, and I looked like a 3-year-old, so I haven't done it since.
Yeah, no, definitely Scar. I want her wardrobe. When they went to the fancy dress ball in while pulling their heist, I was like, Jay, step aside. I'm going internet shopping, and
Yeah.
came back with full outfits for the entire squad, and even started to explain my logic in all of the choices, and then was like, and you know, you don't need this information. Here's what they're wearing, and on we went.
Looks great.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you for humoring me on those. I appreciate it. Over to some questions from our viewers, listeners, all types of receivers. Your audiobook team, this is from Haley, second to none and deliver your words beautifully. Listening to your collaborations make my commutes to work. Will the Aurora's End audiobook be available in UK soon?
I would think so. You would think we would know, but we authors never do.
No, we don't.
But,
I've seen a couple of questions about this in the last day.
So Haley, we will pick it up and find out for you, and pop something on social media. But because our audio team are absolutely amazing. Our producer Nick just works magic. You know, it's the same team who did the Illuminate books, which you would have thought could never be turned into audio. And yeah, everything about the books that they've done is just, I feel like we can say that because we didn't have anything to do with it. It's just
nothing at all.
Yeah.
We got thrown a bunch of casting suggestions from Nick, and we had a bunch of our rows. A lot of Illuminate alumni made it into Aurora as well, just because they were super amazing and talented people, and we wanted to work with them again. But we had a bunch of new faces as well, so we're really quite lucky in that respect. Like, some authors don't get consulted on the cast for their audiobook at all. You just kind of get given it. We hope you like it, because if you don't, here it is. But yeah, Nick's been super great in involving us from the get-go. So, but you know, he's just an incredibly talented guy. Like, the soundscapes that he puts together are just extraordinary. So yeah, I saw somebody on Instagram said that there was some back way that they got their audiobook. Like, when you look for it, I'm not sure if it was on Audible or not. When you look for it, you couldn't find it. But if there was some sneaky way, I think it's up there, at least for Americans. But yeah, we will check with our publishers in the UK and find out what's happening ASAP. Because the audio book's great. The casts are incredible. So
yeah, so check our Insta stories over the next couple of days, and we'll post something for you when we figure it out.
Yeah.
This one's from Nell. The Sildrathi give off Vulcan and Romulan vibes. Is my Trekkie loving self right?
Yeah, Amy and I are both Trek heads. They're
Zila also gives off Vulcan vibes, so you know that thing's
sure. Vulcans are basically elves in space, like, and that was our concept as well. They're a little, you know, Vulcans they have the whole in control of their emotions thing. Sildrathi aren't quite that, but yeah, we wanted to give the feeling of a long-lived race that were in decline, I guess, was the vibe that we were going for. So a race that had kind of ruled the galaxy while we were still shooting each other with muskets and whatnot, but have kind of fallen from grace and fallen from power, and they're kind of in the twilight of their reign. So yeah, we wanted to have that kind of faded grandeur that the Tolkien elves have. Like, you know, the elves are leaving Middle Earth at the end of that cycle, so they have had their time and they're moving on to somewhere else. So yeah, we wanted to give that same kind of vibe. But there's all kinds of old sci-fi properties that play into that. Babylon 5 was a huge inspiration for us as well. Like, I'm a massive Michael fan. So
the very first mission that the squad go on in the very first book, they head to an abandoned station owned by the Jupiter Mining Corporation, which is a red dwarf salute. So
yeah, which Americans don't get, but all the Brits will know. Yeah, like when we were casting the audiobook for Magellan, we sent Nick clips, because Nick's American, so we sent him clips of Talkie Toaster from Red Dwarf, and said this is what we want him to sound like. What the hell is this? Yeah.
I love it.
Because I mean, we grew up with it because we have the ABC over here, and ABC gets fed a lot of their shows from the BBC, but Americans just don't have any idea what Red Dwarf is. So yeah, so it's a talking toaster, but yeah.
All right.
Why does the toaster talk?
There's a couple of questions here that I might ask at the same time in case they spark one off the other. Camilla asks, what is one best piece of writing advice you would give aspiring writers? Louise is asking, what software do you use to write? They might have some sort of relationship, so just throwing them out there. Some process questions.
Yeah,
I just use Word.
Yeah. I sometimes use Scrivener to outline, but like we just use Word and email a Word document back and forth. It's very unscientific.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you really need to try for yourself, because some writers I know swear by Scrivener, and they see it as a really valuable tool, and there do seem to be a lot of bells and whistles. That it depends how your brain is built. Like a lot of the functionality in Scrivener, I kind of do up here, and so formalizing it and actually doing it physically, it struck me as a really good way to spend time doing stuff that I already knew. Not a waste of time, like nothing is a waste of time, but it felt like it was an unnecessary step in my process. But everybody's process is different, so it's probably worth checking out Scrivener, because a lot of writers do find it really, really valuable in terms of sorting things out and codifying everything in their heads.
Yeah, but I mean, I think ultimately it's like, try lots of things, but also know that you don't need any specific thing in order to, like,
no, not at all.
Something to write with and something to write on. That can be a napkin and a pen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like I've still got the napkin that we worked the wormhole map out for Gemina on in a pub, like with a pen and a napkin. So yeah, it depends, and it's a matter of experimentation. But yeah, anyone that tells you that you need to do a particular thing is probably incorrect. What you need to do is find what works for you and then do it.
So does this
in terms of
advice you would give then?
I mean, that is also pretty good writing advice, but
that's what I thought. I asked them together.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there is no one golden rule. There is no one right way. Like whatever way you figure out that works for you and results in a finished book is the right way for you. And that will change over the course of you writing books. Like the way I write books now is very different to the way that I used to write them kind of 10 years ago. So your processes will change and you'll figure out new things, and your brain will probably change as well in terms of the way that you tell your stories. I mean, one of the most basic pieces of advice I give is finish what you start, which sounds like a really simple thing, but it's actually super hard. Like there's a lot of first chapters out there in the world. Right. You know, it's easy to write a first chapter. It's hard to finish the book.
Yeah.
There's a billion first chapters out there. There's not a lot of finished novels, but if you actually finish the novel that you're working on, it's automatically better than 99% of the novels out there, because you actually finished the damn thing.
Yes.
So yeah, and learning to actually stick with something, you know, because there's always the idea of the new shiny thought that pops up into your head, and that's a bit of, you know, grass is always greener. Like the idea that you're not working on might feel cooler than the one you're actually slogging through, because finishing a book can be a slog. Like it's a really hard thing to do, but learning how to do it is absolutely invaluable. So it sounds trite, but yeah, finish what you start is one of the most important lessons you will ever learn.
Yeah, for sure. I think the piece of advice I probably apply most in my own writing life is, you know, we went to Professor Tolkien for Elf Inspo, but he also once talked about the idea of creative compost, you know, the idea that everything you consume, whether it's, you know, a book or a movie or a trip or a person you meet or, you know, a piece of nonfiction or whatever it is, it all falls to your mental forest floor, and then what you create grows out of that. And so that you should cultivate that mental compost, you know, and that doesn't mean you've got to travel the world. It might just mean that you watch documentaries, or that you speak to someone you wouldn't usually speak to, or that, you know, if you want to write YA sci-fi, you don't just read YA sci-fi, because then that's what grows will just sound like exactly what already exists. If you've also read horror and romance and gone to an astrophysics lecture by Professor Cox and done all this other cool stuff, then what grows will be different instead. And, you know, like our books, it might be a love letter to women. Right, yeah, we learned about a whole lot of...
Did it start with an art exhibition? Like...
We started at the Tivoli Museum in Seattle, where we just went because we were told that there was great art there. And, you know, if anyone would like to see some of that art, I think it's like the second to last most recent post on my Instagram account. I put up some of the sculptures that we saw that day. But yeah, that was us not yet knowing what we were going to write, but just, you know, cultivating our creative compost with lots of cool stuff. So I think that's something you can be doing all the time.
Yeah, and like I had never heard of Chidley. I had no idea who the hell this guy was. And it's not the kind of thing that I would have gone out of my way to do. But, you know, that one trip to that one museum spawned the idea that started another trilogy. Like, I remember that it's pretty beautiful. Like, you should check some of his stuff out online. But there's one room where the floor is just covered with glass plants. It looks like the surface of an alien world. And it was like, yeah, we're gonna write this world one day. So yeah, inspiration can come from everywhere and anywhere. So yeah, keeping yourself open to new experiences and new ways of seeing the world and new opinions, doing things that you wouldn't normally do, seeing films that you don't think you're going to like. Yeah, because it's really valuable, because inspiration can come from everywhere.
Okay, and if anyone wants more writing advice from these two, there's Amie's podcast with Jay guest starring that we'll remind you of. There's another plug. We are heading towards running out of time. Before we go though, is there anything we haven't covered that you two would like to cover?
I mean, I think the one thing we always like to do at events like this is just, and it sounds a bit cheesy, but we really, really mean it, is just say thank you, because we get to do this for a job. You know, we wake up, and this is the most dressed I'm going to be for a while, because, you know, and same for him. You know, we wake up and but you know, like we can wake up.
This is my best clothes.
But you know, but the thing is, like we do see what our readers do. You know, we see the recommendations, we see the reviews. You know, we see the art and the music and the tattoos and the incredibly, you know, put together photos and the memes, and, you know, we see everything that they do in order to support our books, and to kind of come and, the greatest honor you can think of is for someone to come and join you in your fictional world and come play with you. And we see when that happens, and we're just so grateful for that support. You know, like, I mean, every author thinks they've got the best readers in the world, but I feel like they haven't seen ours, because
like every little bit helps. Like having a great publisher who backs you is wonderful, but nothing compares to a recommendation from a friend. Like, you know, you see an ad on television or whatever, that's one thing, but if a friend comes up and tells you that you need to see this movie or read this book or listen to this album, that means way much more than, you know, any message from some big publisher or company or whatever. So even if you're just recommending our books to a friend, you're doing more than you will ever know. So yeah, everyone out there spreading the word about our stuff, thank you, because we couldn't do this without you. It sounds trite, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty lovely note to wrap up on.
And thanks, Pete. Thanks for doing this for us. It's good to see you again. It's been like 2 years, I think. So yeah.
Yeah. Again, like I said, not that I'm counting the days till January, when hopefully all I can come out and get some sun. So yeah, thanks to everyone who's come along to listen tonight. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get through all of your questions. Do check on social media in the coming days for word on the UK audiobook, and we will say adieu.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank you, Waterstones, for having us.
Yes, thanks, Waterstones. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yes, probably. All right.
Thanks, guys.